Okay, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. This morning, I'm very pleased to have with you as my guest Joanna Hubberts, who's a partner at Cooley. Joanna, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Joanna, you've got one of the more unusual backgrounds that I come across talking to lawyers, and that is you have an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering. Tell me why you chose that major in the first place.
Yeah, so I always had an affinity for math and science, even as kind of early as elementary school. I really enjoyed math and just wanted to continue learning in that space. And then as I kind of got older, I tried to think a little bit more about what I would want to do with that. And
Hmm.
I really wanted to go into a field where it was applied. It wasn't kind of theoretical math, it was kind of math and science applied to problem solving. And so I did a little bit of research into kind of typical fields where you would use those skill sets. And so I decided, engineering would be a great fit for me. And then I'm a really visual person. I'm a visual learner. And I liked that mechanical engineering, you can kind of see things happening in real time and understand the forces and what's at play. And so I figured that would be a good place to start. And so I applied mechanical engineering to colleges, so specifically into that major. And when I got into UCLA, I decided, all right, let's go and give it a shot. And then I loved it the whole time.
Oh, wow, interesting. So, what kind of career goals did you have at that time?
So that's a really interesting question. I might be an anomaly in this respect, in that I wanted to be a patent lawyer, actually.
Oh,
So I
fun.
had I had decided pretty early on, maybe like middle school age, that I really like math and science. Like I said, I wanted to be able to apply that to problems in the real world. So I thought engineering was a good path in order to get me to be a patent lawyer, which I had
Hmm.
understood at the time you needed a technical background for.
Oh,
So I
wow.
actually, when I graduated from UCLA, I already had a job lined up in engineering, but I took the LSAT before I started that job because my idea was, okay, I'll go. It's important to get, I had heard, and I thought it was important to get real world engineering experience. So I thought, okay, I'll get this job in engineering. I'll take the LSAT in advance of that and be ready in a few years to kind of apply to law school after I've gotten, my feet wet a little bit in the field.
That's so funny. Well, how did you get inspired to become a patent lawyer in middle school? Did you have a relative or something that was a patent lawyer?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm not entirely sure. Neither of my parents are lawyers, but we did
Oh,
have a very close family friend who was a patent lawyer. And I
okay.
don't actually remember thinking, oh, he's a patent lawyer, so I should be a patent lawyer. But I presume there was some kind of, influence on how I even knew that that field
Huh.
existed, right?
Huh.
But yeah, I think I'm kind of the type of person where when I set my sights on something, I really am,
Wow. That's,
adamant about kind of taking the steps needed to achieve
did
that.
you
And I
know
think I had just
anything?
decided, yeah,
Yeah.
that would be a good fit for me.
Did you know anything about it as you were going through college or what what it would be like working as a patent lawyer or anything like that?
So not while I was going through college, but I did while I was studying for the LSAT. I had the same thought where I said, "Hey, I've been thinking I want to do this for a long time. I should probably pressure test that, before before I go to law school." And so I got a job working at a small IP boutique where I did some as kind of a clerk doing patent litigation, helping out on patent litigation, actually a little bit of trademark litigation and on patent prosecution work, just to make sure, hey, this is actually a good fit for me. I'm going to like
Yeah.
this type of job. And,
Yeah.
and I did. And so I kind of stayed the course after
Oh,
that.
interesting. And how did you like law school, or what did you think of law school, which is very different from obviously being engineer?
Yeah, so I liked law school a lot. I think I approached law school maybe a little bit differently than some of my peers because
Yeah.
at least where I went, there was a significant number of people who went straight through, right? So they came
Yes.
right from college into law school. I had worked, for 2 years. I paid my way through law school on loans. I was living in San Francisco. I had left my job where I was, doing pretty well for a young person as an engineer to making $0 and spending a lot of money to go to
Right.
law school. And so I really approached law school as a job. For me, it was, I was going there for a particular reason and I treated it as such. And, candidly, it wasn't that hard relative to engineering. Like I viewed law school almost, it was like problem solving, but you don't need to support it with math,
Yeah.
right? Or numbers. It was just, you need to understand the way to think about the problem. And then you need to be able to explain it in, writing, which might be harder in a different way. But For me, it was really the problem solving mindset that I had kind of learned and used as an engineer really applied pretty directly for me to law school. And
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
found it to be, I mean, it was great also because I'd been working full time and my job before law school had a significant amount of shift work. And so if there was times where I was working, 12 hours a day, noon to midnight, noon to 3 o'clock in the morning, weeks to months on in a row with 0 days off. And so going from that to law school, which, as you know, as a student schedule is felt like a break, candidly, too. So it was
Now,
great.
I know you said you went to law school with the idea of becoming a patent lawyer, but while you were in law school, did you ever think, because obviously you could have done anything else, did you ever consider doing something else or being some other kind of lawyer?
Really, no. I mean, I think I played a little bit like, do I want to be a patent prosecutor versus do I want to be a patent litigator?
Yeah.
But because I really enjoy the technical aspects,
Mhm.
I didn't feel like I wanted to stray too far away from kind of the science and engineering roots I had.
Yeah.
And I actually ended up working, I got my first summer associate job in January or so of my first year of law school, and I started as a first year summer associate after my first year in a patent prosecution role.
Yeah.
And so it kind of took off. I didn't even really have, I had made the decision and then I didn't really look back, kind of thing, right? I guess aligned with what I said earlier, I put,
Wow.
as
Wow.
long as it's going well and I'm enjoying it and I'm liking it, I kind of stayed the course, and it
Yeah.
was a great experience. And then I ended up clerking during law school at that same job, and eventually joining that firm after I
Yeah,
graduated.
yeah, yeah. Well, what kind of technologies have you worked on as a lawyer? I mean, I'm sure it's all over the place, but give
It
me a
is all
feel.
over the place. So my practice is mostly focused on life sciences and in particular in med tech. So
Mm.
any type of medical technology. So that encompasses hardware or software. Now we're seeing a lot of AI ML, but in med tech fully across the board. And then I've also done some kind of consumer product type work and some other more, diagnostics, other things that kind of tilt more towards the kind of harder life sciences, if you will.
Yeah. Do you feel like you get to use your mechanical engineering degree at all or a lot?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. It's certainly foundational aspects of engineering I use all of the time. I think the biggest thing is being able to talk. I spend a lot of time talking to engineers or technical folks, right? And making sure I understand the invention and trying to think through how we should claim that, what's the best way to get the broadest scope of exclusivity, for the client. And being able to kind of speak the lingo, understand quickly what they're talking about. I mean, that's a lot of what you're ending up doing is being able to consume and understand very complex technology very quickly, even if it's not, you know, piping systems like I was working on as an engineer, the same kind of foundation, fundamental engineering skills are applicable to a lot of what I touch. And then we didn't talk about this, but my first year as an associate, there was a water treatment patent litigation case that came in, and I worked at a refinery before I
Mm.
went to law school, and so I was probably one of the only people, if not the only people, on the team who even knew what a water tower looked like, who I'd been inside of one. And so that was actually, I mean, if we're talking about application of prior experience, it was a direct application of working in a refinery for several years. But most of what I do now is not kind of pressure vessels and piping systems, but the same foundational,
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
concepts apply.
What's the most complicated technology you've come across as a lawyer?
That's a hard question. I don't know that anything, I mean, maybe some kind of complex signal processing, because that's a
Mm.
little bit outside of kind of my foundational training. But I
Yeah,
think as my job often is to just be able to get to, jump in, dive in, get into the weeds and
yeah,
pick it up. And so
yeah,
I think that's why in retrospect, that's kind of a hard question to answer, because once you get into it, then none of it actually seems as complicated as it does kind of when you first start. But I guess I would say maybe some areas where it's not as core to my technical training.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, overall, it sounds like you're pretty happy with your career choice. You wouldn't have done something differently if you could go back and do it again.
The short answer is yes. I think hindsight is always 2020. But whenever anybody asks, sometimes we'll do these intros where they say, "What would you do if you weren't a lawyer?"
Yeah,
I never really have a great answer to that question. I think I don't know, maybe I would have been a doctor, but that's because I work in the medical field and I really enjoy that area and that
Yeah,
technology. And so
yeah,
I would probably stay close to that. But I think this is an awesome job. I get to learn a lot every day, which is great. I get to learn about kind of cutting edge technologies. And because I work in life sciences, it's often technologies that are really helping people, which is important to me also. So I find it really rewarding.
yeah. Well, Joanna, this has been a fascinating conversation. I love interviewing engineers who become lawyers and then particularly ones that really enjoy what they do. And that was totally evident today. So I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great chatting with you.
This is Richard Hsu and Joanna Hubberts. Thanks.